Peroxide's biggest problems. So Peroxide's been out for a few days now, but I've been playing the game for a few weeks, and listen, I got a lot to talk about. Although I will say there has been a lot of improvements since I started playing the game, there definitely are still a lot of things that I think need to be addressed. But I also made a community post asking you guys what you thought, and a lot of you guys responded, so I want to go over some of those as well. If you want to participate next time, make sure to subscribe, but let's get straight into it. I stream on Twitch daily.
God did.
The first comment I want to talk about talks about how the game's progression is boring and one-dimensional. But what I also want you guys to notice is he says maybe the progression picks up. So does the progression get more interesting towards the later part of the game? And the unfortunate answer is really no. And before you hit me with did you progress through the entire game? Well, I'm on my third slot. I already have a Volt Standing slot and a Bankai slot, and I just got my Vastokar slot. And when you first load in the game, you might think, damn, there's a bunch of options for progression, but in reality, there's really not. You could say the quest boards give you a bunch of different options, but in reality, they're all just the same quest put in a different phrase, like kill 3 hollows instead of 15 hollows, or kill 1 Metos, 3 Metoses. It's just a bunch of different versions of the same quest. But let's say I'm just hating on the quest boards and you actually think the quest boards are pretty good. You're realistically only going to be doing them until about level 60, and then at that point, for the whole rest of your gameplay experience, you're going to be doing invasions. And invasions literally consist of just grabbing the same object and putting it in the same place a million times, or killing the same 5 NPCs. And I've heard some people really dislike this progression, and some people also say it's really fun. And I think the big disparity is between people that played with friends and people that played by themselves. I played with and without friends, and when I was playing with friends, it completely changed my experience of the game. The next problem I want to look at is definitely not as big of a deal, but it's still something I think needs to be talked about, because I think it could improve most people's gameplay experience a lot, and that's the AIs in this game in general. The fact that I can't tell the difference between a normal player and an AI might sound like a good thing, but in reality, I don't really think it is. The amount of times I've heard, damn, you're a player, my fault gang, is literally insane. But why is it a bad thing? Well, in the comments example, a lot of times in hollow progression, you lose progress for dying. So a lot of times people are killing players on accident that they normally wouldn't want to kill. And adding a small outline so you could tell the difference really wouldn't hurt the game in my opinion. So I think that's something they could do for that. But in general, these AIs just need to be tweaked a little bit in my opinion. The fact that the AIs will be running from you is crazy. And normally that wouldn't be really a big deal at all. But what makes it really painful and tedious in my opinion is the fact that multiple NPCs can aggro on you for no reason and they'll all be running away. You try to grip one and then they'll stop you. And I think the biggest problem in all of this is the fact that multiple NPCs will aggro on you for no reason. If you think about most games, they limit the amount of NPCs that can aggro onto you to 1 at a time unless you manually hit the others. And this stops you from getting jumped. But in this game, there's no limit. So if you run past 20 NPCs or get anywhere in their vicinity, because the range is really crazy on these NPCs, then they're all gonna chase you and they won't stop following you until you're dead. But now when I get to what everybody's been talking about, and my opinion has changed on this a little bit, so I want to talk about it again, and that's the combat. I forgot to say this before, but I always kind of believe the combat was slightly overhated. And that doesn't mean the combat is good or anything, that just means what people hold the combat to is actually worse than it probably is. With that being said, do I like the combat? No. Do I think the combat could be a lot better? Yes. And what I'm really trying to still figure out is if the reason I don't like the progression is because of the combat, or it's just because of how the progression system works in this game. Because if it is because of the combat, then it's actually a lot bigger deal than I think. So I'd actually like to ask some of you guys that also don't enjoy the progression, do you think it's because of the combat or it's just because of how the progression works? Right now I'm kind of leaning to a mix of both. Now I also want to talk about this comment that says it's definitely not up to their expectations, but it's definitely better than most Bleach games. And let's all be real here, even if this game isn't to your preference, there's a reason it's by far the biggest Bleach game right now. And if we're being honest here, it peaked at like 70-80k. I think that's the most out of any Bleach game ever. So even with all the things I said that I think they're doing wrong, there's obviously still a lot they're doing right. And if you look in the devlogs, they do clearly work hard. They're always updating the games, and they have been very good with the pay to win. By that I mean they've been dropping a lot of codes, and obviously there still is a lot of free ways to earn money, like the AFK area and just through playing the game and getting drops. And I think a lot of devs underrate how important pay to win is to the average Roblox player, and I think this game is looking like it's gonna have a lot of success because of it. Now in my opinion, Peroxide is really a question of longevity. Are they going to be able to add enough things for the player base to do to be able to compete with the players' hunger? Now if I had to take a guess and look at the history of Bleach games, I would say no, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. And with how dry the Roblox community is as we speak, I can only wish Peroxide success, because we obviously need something to play and talk about. But if you frequently watch my content and want to support it, I'd appreciate if y'all like and subscribe, because it helps the channel a lot, or just check out the Twitch because that also helps me a lot so I can make these videos for y'all. I appreciate y'all. Later.
Life. There's Roblox.